Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I am here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here to cause more trouble with you, as we always enjoy. And I'm so excited because we've got a fantastic interview lined up for you for today. We have two authors. They're both best-selling authors. They also have a podcast called Two Authors. And boy, Douglas Pratt, Nicholas Harvey, welcome to Get to Know.
Thank you very so much. Thanks for having us.
It's really great to have you guys. And as Doug knows, and as I'm about to spring on you, I'd like to put you on the psychiatry couch there for a minute. And I'll go to one of you and then also ask the same question of the other. And that is, do you think your childhood contributed to you becoming authors? Were you introverted children? Were you extroverted children, athletes, book readers, both? Share with us. Why don't we go to Nicholas first?
Why me? Pick on him.
I liked your beautiful smile, so that's why I went.
Oh, wow.
Oh, geez. So as a kid, I actually was a fairly keen reader. And then in what you would call high school, we call secondary school in the UK, I kind of went away from that. I discovered everything I shouldn't be doing. And I was into racing and at the time, so I missed a lot of school. And I kind of got out of that whole reading mode for what seemed like decades. But I gravitated back towards it. And about the only thing I was eager to do at school was write stories. And I didn't know that would come back around in a circle, but it eventually did.
Yeah. When you were young, did you have imaginary friends? Or, I mean, like I used to at night, how I put myself to sleep was I'd always make up a big story. Of course, I starred in it. Anyway,
he still has them though.
Imaginary friends. Love
it. Yeah. Yeah, I was always into expanding stories. Like I'd hear something, I'd watch a show on TV, and then I'd play out the next episode or what could have happened or what would happen next. So I did do a lot of that. And, you know, you always think you're normal, right? Jeffrey Dahmer probably thought he was normal, but but it didn't seem strange to me, but it did take a long time for me to, this is a second career writing for me. So it took a while to come around in a circle.
So I'm going to jump to Douglas, but then I'm going to want to come back to you on when you decided to really go professional. But Douglas, tell us about your childhood.
Well, I wanted to be a writer since I was as far back as I can remember. I read constantly, everything, anything. I wrote like a first book, which was called Frisky the Frog, and I still have a copy of it because my mom found it. It's all stapled together. I was like second or third grade. It was, you know, a lot of rip-offs of other things. You know, there's some Superman and some other things mixed into it, but it was, I wrote them all by hand and I did that. And I was always writing stories. So to me, it's just been a lifelong that I wanted to do it. And just, it is also a second career for me because it's something I didn't do right away. Cause yes, a lot of us raised in the 80s and 90s were like, you know, discouraged from doing anything too creative because it didn't offer you a lot of money. And, so now I'm loving it. And so that's kind of where I got to. But I did have my fair share of imaginary friends as well. Like I said, I constantly just played in my own head for the most part.
Do you remember their names?
One was named Sam.
I had Snarky and Hyacinth.
Oh, nice. Okay.
They're probably still around here somewhere. But anyway.
They linger in my head still, so I'm sure. So.
And were you a big reader back then?
Oh, I read constantly. I mean, I read all sorts of stuff as a kid. Like I loved mysteries and thrillers. I mean, I read the Encyclopedia Brown, the old Three Investigators that featured Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, I read like all the Wizard of Oz books when I was a kid, like the entire, however many 40 odd books that L. Frank Baum wrote. I would devour everything.
So tell us about, you know, I don't know whether you went to college or not, but what you studied, if you did, and then your first career.
So I actually went to college for journalism because I was like, I wanted to write, and I knew that everybody told me if you try to make a career out of writing novels, you'll never make any money. So I thought journalism was a good idea, which is even dumber idea because nobody made money in journalism, especially around the time I graduated, which is the late 90s when the internet took over and newspapers died for a little bit. So yeah, I did do that, and I took a little longer. Instead of going into journalism, I had a very short stint in that. Ended up in food and beverage and ran bars and bartending for a long time before I jumped off.
But you probably got warmed up to the Hemingway way of having a few cocktails and then staying up late writing. Did
That
that?
was totally. I'd often come home from work after working a long like shift, and even when I was first married, I'd come home and I would write for a little bit by a long hand, if just kind of wind down after my wife and kids were all in bed, and it's like 2 in the morning and I'm still wired awake, so I'd sit down and write. So
And how about you, Nicholas? College, did you do any of that? And what was your
No, I
first?
very strategically avoided it. I was in I left school when I was 16, which is not that unusual in the UK. Once I took my O levels, and we had what we all call career day, which is fairly unexciting in the way we did it. We sat down with the deputy headmaster and discussed what career paths we might have, and he said, "Harvey, are you coming back to take your A levels?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "Good." And that was the end of career day for me. so, so that about summed up my high school career. So I went straight into, yeah. So I went straight into racing. My father was in motor racing. My brother was already kind of involved in it. So I went straight into racing. I was already racing karts myself. Uh, and so I started racing cars, couldn't afford it. So I'd race whenever I could afford to fix the car up, and then work for race teams. And then that grew into my first career, where I taught at a racing school in America for full time for about 5 years, and then helped set up and engineer other people's race cars for them, and went on to managing teams. And then finally being in charge of the engineering group of a NASCAR team is where I
Wow.
left off my racing career. Yeah, so left school at 16 and ended up in charge of about 45 engineers, and now I write books for a living. So, but my wife and I made a big decision in 2018. We made the decision, and we set up like a 6-month runway where we were going to just change our lives. We were tired of being on the mouse wheel, because I know it sounds exciting to be in racing, but it was a big corporate company. It just happened to be in racing. And so we had a bit of savings. We sold a house, sold everything, bought an RV, went full nomad. And that's when I said, well, I'd already written one book in my spare time when I was racing, and I'd done nothing with it. So I said, I enjoyed doing that. Let's give that a go, because, pick a second career that's like pie in the sky stuff. And we were fortunate. We had some savings. We bummed around for about 6 months, traveling national parks, having a great time. And then we knuckled down, and my wife got a job, and she supported us while I started building the career, which started in 2020. And now, fortunately, I'm able to make a living to support us.
That is so cool. I mean, I just love it. You guys both have had such an interesting path. And I find that so many authors they usually have a first career and then go on to a second, their writing career. So it's so much fun.
So
Oh yeah.
let's talk about some of the things that you've written. Doug, let's start with you, since we have the same name.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, you've got a few books out there that you did on your own. Each of you have done stuff on your own, and you've done stuff together. But let's
Yes.
talk about your stories and your characters. How did all that start, and where are you in that process?
So my first book was one I wrote. It's a character who is Max Sawyer, and I wrote 6 books in that series over a long span of time. I probably started that first one, and I think I tell people all the time, my first book took me like 7 years to write. Because I wrote it, I rewrote it, or like a lot of people do. You hold that first one really close to your heart, and then now I look at it, I'm like, man, it's like that one kid that you have that you always like, wish that one wasn't my kid. But that's
Good job. None of your kids will listen to this, Doug.
oh yeah, no, my kids don't listen or read anything I do anyway. So, but no, that series still holds a special place in my heart. It just never sold very well. So my other big passion is I've always loved the water, and like Nick, we both have a passion for that. And so I just kind of started thinking about how can I write a book that's focused on the water and the tropics and stuff like that. Um, and so that kind of that into my tropical thriller series, which follows my Chase Gordon series.
And what's your most recent in that?
Uh, the most recent one just came out in December, and that was called Green Flash, which actually refers to, if you're familiar at all with tropics, is the little green flash you get sometimes on sunset. Yeah, it's beautiful. I didn't put one on the cover, but it's definitely it's a great fun. Chase Gordon he's a former Marine who lives on a boat and bartends on a part time, and he just gets into a lot of trouble. So there's a lot of action in these books. There's a lot of killing people, blowing things up. I have a good time doing that a lot. I've since spun off a few other series. I just released a book that's a spinoff of with Chase's best friend Jay, who is also a Marine who took over chief of police in a small town in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. So that one just came out actually last week. So it's been an exciting one to do too. So
What's that titled?
that one's called The Woman Under the Bridge, and it hits more of a like a police procedural or a you
Beautiful
know.
cover.
Oh yes, thank you. I have a wonderful cover artist who does all of my covers, and he does a great job with those. So, but it's a good. Yeah, Jay shows up. He goes back to his hometown of Ocean Springs to take care of his father, who's got Alzheimer's, and takes on a job as chief of police. And first day there, they find a body, and it's just kind of launches into a good serial killer fun. Um, and it's got a lot of backstory that goes with it. We're digging around into some of his backstory and kind of giving him a little bit more flesh and blood to him. So,
Well, they say titles and covers sell books probably more than anything else, unless
oh,
you're
they
like
do.
Stephen King or somebody.
Right.
Well, this title and this cover, I can't imagine isn't working very, very
Nah,
well.
I certainly hope so.
Literally.
We're a week out on it, so it's doing pretty well. I'm excited about it. So I'm already
Good.
working on the second one in that series.
I love it.
I'm excited about that series. It's fun. Like I said, I grew up loving mysteries and thrillers anyway, so this is right down that path of something I like. So
Cool. So
Yes.
Nicholas, tell us about your work that's standalone, if you will, or that's your work, and then we'll talk about your collaborations. But
Yeah.
what's going
So
on? What's going on there?
I'm reading Woman Under the Bridge at the moment. I'm about halfway through it, and it is superb. I know he's my mate and everything else, but it really is a superb book. So, so I have two main series that I write: the AJ Bailey Adventure series, which are like mystery adventures. She's a dive boat operator in the Cayman Islands. When I wrote my first book while I was still in racing, I forever wanted to write a book, and it just and I had this idea that kept brewing and brewing and brewing, and I had most of it put together, and then I finally came up with the last piece of the puzzle. And so I didn't have any more excuses. So I just started writing. And that's 12 Mile Bank. And my passions were scuba diving, the Cayman Islands, which my wife and I had been traveling to for years, and spent a lot of time down there, especially diving. And I had this obsession with World War II diesel submarines. So I tried to figure out a way of putting all those together. And hiding a submarine in the Cayman Islands is pretty tricky. The Cayman Islands are very flat. The Grand Cayman is very, very flat. It slopes off to about 100 feet underwater and then drops to hundreds and hundreds of feet. And every part of it has been scanned, looked at, dived. So it was pretty hard to find a location to legitimately hide a submarine. And that's the part that I finally came up with how I could do it. And so I wrote the book. And so that is now a 16-book series. The most recent edition is Cemetery Beach, which just came out in January, and did well for me. It's a fun story, and in that series I write. They're not exclusively, but almost all the books and everyone I write now are dual timeline. So I set something in the past and I choose a different era, something I'm just interested in. Cemetery Beach was based around a hippie rock band in 1969 from England that ended up on this studio boat traveling down to the islands. So we follow them and their story. And then the protagonist, AJ Bailey, she finds something in modern time and is trying to trace where it came from. And then the two stories meet at the end of it. So they're a lot of fun. And what stays really fresh about that series for me is writing dual timeline. Half of it, I'm writing the characters that I know and love. And half of it, I'm writing all new characters in a whole new scene with a whole new story. So it keeps the series really fresh and exciting for me to write. And then a spin-off character from that series is Nora Sommer. And she's a Norwegian runaway who got into trouble in several of the A.J. Bailey books. And she just became such a powerful character to me. When I was deciding to write a second series, I kind of made a list of all the tropes I should hit to nail the sea adventures market, which my first series and, Doug's Chase Gordon series, that's how we met through Tropical Authors, actually, a great website that helps co-promote all that stuff. So I was kind of looking into the center of that genre going, okay, he should be a male protagonist. He should be former military, former police. He should be in the Florida Keys, bumming around, and then everything blows up and shoot guns around him. And so I made the list and then went, nah, screw it. I really want to write this Nora Sommer character. So that's what I did. And that's taken off. She becomes a constable in the Royal Cayman Islands Police. And so they're more police procedural thrillers. And that series now has 7 books. And income-wise, it does better for me with those 7 books than the AJ book series does with 16 books.
Well, somewhere along the line, you guys decided, probably in a moment of insanity and alcohol, to write together. It's kind of like marriages. You want a big house, so so how did you guys decide to come together, and how did that evolve, and what have y'all done together?
Well, we've been drinking.
Yes.
A lot. Regularly.
No, actually, truth be told, the Tropical Authors group that was started by Wayne Stinnett and Nick Sullivan, that really helps put a lot of people together in that kind of genre. That's how Doug and I got to know each other and know each other's books originally. And then we started chatting a little bit. Doug and his wife were I think you were on a cruise, weren't you? And you stopped by. We were staying in the Keys at the time.
We got back from a cruise and we
stopped
off and hung out with you guys.
And we had lunch together and we really hit it off. And then we saw each other again at NINC. And we've been sort of from that, we've been messaging back and forth. And we hit it off as friends and chatting about books. Yeah. And we shared a kind of a similar view to a lot of things. And we were at NINC, I think it was, wasn't it, Doug? And
yeah, I believe it was, yeah.
And that's a great group and a great conference. Yes.
Yes, it's the one I go to every year. I really get a lot out of it. So we're like, we got to do something together, man. We got to write something. And at that time, the Tropical Authors were doing these collaborations, and we'd written Graceless and Timeless with a group of 4 of us. And then Doug went on to do one of those. So there was collaboration stuff in the air. But that's how I remember it coming down. And we just said, we got to do this. So then we started BSing about an idea.
So what's your process when you're working together? How do you guys come up with a concept, and how does it work to develop?
Well, initially we started off with, Nick is great with female protagonists. So when we took on our Missing series, which is our Green Wolf series, it's on our first book is Missing in the Keys. It's we each kind of write the point of view from one of our characters, and there are 2 characters. His is a female British former constable, and mine is a former sheriff in the Keys, and turns out that they were siblings and didn't know it. So a lot of it is we just kind of get together. In the initial book, I think we just kind of sat around, came up with what was ideas of what we thought was a great mystery and great story, and then the dialogue and the interactions between the Charlie and Grant are I think what really makes the book, because they have we have a lot of fun with it too. And it's a lot of poking fun at each other sometimes in the process. So, but the great thing is, Nick's such a great writer. I think we both try to outdo the other one. So we write a chapter and send it to the other one, and we try to see how we can make it and we don't leave it where we're stuck. Like we plan out enough so we know where we're going, but we do try to, it makes you kind of step up your game when hey, I've got to send it right off to him to look at and make sure that everything looks great on it. So I think that helps us, further along our process as far as that go. What
How
do you
many
think,
books
Nick?
do you have in the Missing series?
We've got 2 out.
We're
We're
working on the
working
third.
the
Yeah.
third one right now. So
What are you said the keys? What are the other two? Zanzibar and
Missing in
Hawaii.
Zanzibar, and we're working on Missing in Hawaii right now. So
Okay, very
Yeah.
cool.
Very,
and
very
initially, I think we were like, "Hey, let's go on
Oh, that's-
vacation to Hawaii and to Zanzibar," but we haven't done any of that. So we just
we haven't made it yet. But I've been to Zanzibar, which is why I kind of talked Doug into doing it there. So
Yeah.
that was part of it. And we write the books in third person. And so we switch the POV, but the reader really doesn't notice that's happening. But we trade back and forth the chapters. And as Doug says, it elevates every time. I'm excited. I read through it and I'm like, damn it. He's made it so exciting. Now I've got to do this next chapter. And you hate it when you've got one of those, not a fill-in chapter, but you can have action, but you've got to have those breathing periods of time and kind of catch the reader up with back, and it's like you hate doing that bit because he's going to do another action one and throw it back at you. So they're really a lot of fun, and we fit it in alongside our other books. So it's
we're
So
only doing one a
we
year,
take a
but
year.
basically, so yeah.
So when is Missing in Hawaii coming out? Or
It
Has
comes out
June.
in June.
June? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Great cover there too.
Yeah,
Oh, yes,
yeah,
thank you.
and I love how you've kept the theme for the, with the red background and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, we want them to look alike so that they all do. And I think Nick did all those covers. Well, he
I
matched
didn't do
those
the
up.
first
So
one.
you didn't do the
Someone
first one.
helped
That's right.
us with the first one, but we've done the next two. So yeah, they're kind of fun to do.
Yeah, they're great.
Tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So-
You guys have done a lot together. What brought you into the podcast world? And I know I was on your show and I had a great time. And I'll tell our listeners out there, go look at this podcast and listen to it. It is so much fun. You know why? Because these guys are crazy. It's a lot of fun.
We do have a lot of fun with it, and I think it kind of started probably a little bit like writing the books together. We'd already been started. I don't remember, Nick. Did we start the books first or the podcast first at this point? So,
The books.
the books first, yeah. So we were doing the books,
keys,
and then we were like, I think the podcast was a great way to start reaching out and meeting and networking with people, and it just kind of grew. And it's also a great way because we're not in the same time zone half the time, so it's a good way for us to sit down and just kind of chat and keep up, and great way for us to meet all these other great authors that we've already known and kind of get to know them and just try to find more and more people out there. And also we like to learn things because I don't know, I'm not the smartest person in the bunch, but it's also nice to share a little bit about what we know so that people come along don't make the same mistakes we do. And I, for one, have tons of them to share with people. So
So tell
it's kind of
us,
part of the what we try and do with the podcast is they need to be smarter than us, which is really easy to find. And the second thing is they need to be more successful than us. And we're making a living, we're doing okay, but we're not the experts. So we're trying to show, various paths to success and clue people in on some stuff to do. We know nothing. We have really intelligent guests like Doug on who can talk a little bit about how they find their way to
Lyle,
success.
not me.
And our audience is,
No.
yeah, I think that was
And
clear.
I paid them to say that, so there's that.
That's right. Yeah. Make sure your check clears this time.
Everybody needs a shield, right?
That's right. Absolutely.
so tell our viewers how they can find your podcast and listen, and also your books.
Nick, you'll go first.
Sure. So the podcast is everywhere they do podcastery things. We do have it on YouTube as well, like you do, guys do. But the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, I believe, all of that. So it's the Two Authors Podcast. You can find it just about anywhere. We're on Podbean, is how we distribute it. So podbean.com, you can go there and find it there as well. And then I'm Amazon exclusive. So all my books are available in Kindle Unlimited and through the Amazon system. And I'm Audible exclusive. I think our joint books are going to go wide shortly. We're just in the process of doing that. But my Nora Sommer series and my AJ Bailey series are both in Amazon and Audible.
And I'm also Kindle Unlimited as well. So all of my books are on Amazon. As far as ebook, you can buy paperbacks anywhere you want to. And my Audible is both. Most of my Chase Gordon series is all exclusive to Audible right now. As I put out some new stuff, it's probably gonna start kind of going a little more wide. But for the moment, Audible is kind of the best place to find me there too.
Do either of you narrate your own books?
Oh God, no.
Yeah, I know.
It's like,
I did a couple, and it is time consuming.
yeah. On top of that, I hate.
Well, you've got a great voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I was gonna say I hate hearing my own voice. I barely like listening to my narrators read my work, much less have to listen to me do it. It'd be even worse. So no.
Well,
that's exactly correct. That's why I don't go back and read my books once they're published, because not only do I find typos, I'm sitting there telling myself, "You're an idiot. That is terrible. That paragraph is awful. Why didn't you edit that better, you stupid?" And the others, you say, "Wow, you're pretty good, man." You know, and
sometimes
it yerks you back and forth.
But also, like I already know the story. Once I finish writing the book, I'm already like, I know what happens, so I don't care anymore. It's like anything else. I don't want to go back and rewatch
Exactly.
something, so.
Yeah, let's move on. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Douglas Pratt, Nicholas Harvey, it's been fantastic to have you on Get to Know. We'll definitely have to have you back when your next book's coming out in June.
Okay,
and
thank you.
for sure, and give our viewers a little taste of what you've got coming up. And I'll throw it back to you, Doug.
Well, it's been great, guys. I mean, and I really, really did enjoy being on your podcast, and I do recommend it for everybody. And your books and all that, go buy them. And we do want to get you back, say around June time when the book's coming out, and we'll talk more deeply about it and some other stuff, and pick your brains and see what's coming down the road. So until then, thanks for being here, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us. This is great. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, that concludes this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel. And as you know, we will be back with other interviews down the road. So until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and don't get caught.